there's only one angle I can take with this Ronald Volkman situation, because there is no Kiwi NRL angle. Ronald Volkman is not from Aotearoa, and the Dragons are the worst Kiwi NRL club. They are the 17th ranked club in my Kiwi NRL power rankings. So anyone listening, and you've been following a bit of Dragons shenanigans, like you are a rugby league fan, you are an NRL fan, you are tuned into all the mishaps of the Dragons, you can also know they don't care about Aotearoa. They don't care about recruitment from Aotearoa. They are the least busy Kiwi NRL recruitment team in the whole NRL, last in my Kiwi NRL power rankings. So allow that to frame your whole perspective on what the Dragons are up to. I will cut out a lot of the rugby league, Aussie NRL kind of intricacies of what's happening here, and we'll keep it. I think we like to provide like quasi-experts views, opinions, insights for the casual fan. Like, we're trying to dive deep into matters, come out with a nugget for the casual fan. And so there's so much weird rugby league stuff in this story that you don't need to know about. But there is this situation where there's a bit of angst against the Warriors for how they dealt with the Ronald Volkman leaving the Warriors, joining the Dragons, and he's got a major injury. Dragons didn't register his contract. Pretty shitty situation for Ronald Volkman. But at the end of the day, Ronald Volkman asked the Warriors for a release. And respectfully, you need to take responsibility for your own actions. And the thing is, a lot of these players, a lot of these athletes, they don't want to, because they have the agent, they have the manager. And I'm sorry, these are getting into the rugby league intricacies that I need to not dive into. Whether it was the agent, whether it was the player, whether the agent did the player wrong, whatever, the player needs to take responsibility for the actions of the agent, because the player is the boss of the agent. Ronald Volkman asked for a release from the Warriors. The Warriors granted him that release. That's it. Whatever part the Warriors are playing in this situation finishes there. You wanted to leave the Warriors. You got your wish. See you later. That's it. Anything else that happens after that, it's up to Volkman and his crew, and then it's up to the Dragons. The key thing is Ronald Volkman requested a release from the Warriors. That's all that really matters here. And there is this other thing, the Warriors, they did apparently pay a bit of Volkman's contract out, or contributed towards his deal with the Dragons. Like, Ronald Volkman's a New South Wales Cup half. So Ronald Volkman probably wasn't earning a lot of money in the NRL salary cap context. So maybe maxing out at 350, 400k, even that seems like too much for a New South Wales Cup half. So the Warriors may have paid like 20k, 50k. This is not one of the situations where you've got a player on 800k and then you're contributing 200k, 300k, 400k. Volkman is on a lower salary, like a bottom of the top 30 salary, and so the Warriors may have just paid him out like 20k, 50k, as I said. So I think that financial contribution is fairly minimal, but again, I don't see how the Warriors have done anything wrong when they bowed to the player. They granted him a release, and everything got caught in a bit of a shitstorm after that. As the Dragons fan, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with it as you lay it out there. I do think it's been a strange situation, because it's like, dumb thing happened, and then everyone wants to blame each other kind of thing. Like the Dragons are trying to blame the Warriors and saying they didn't tell them about the shoulder problems that were existing for Volkman when he left, which is another reason why Volkman's got to be very careful. Like because it's not just that he requested a release from the Warriors. He requested a release from what I understand was 2 more years on his contract with the Warriors to sign a 1-year contract with the Dragons, knowing he had a busted shoulder. He probably didn't know the extent of the busted shoulder, but he has had busted that shoulder in the past, right? So he'd had shoulder reconstruction as a youngster, I think, at some point, like as I don't know, coming out of high school or something. Like it's an existing injury that's flared up again, or something like that. Super risky. And the reason it's risky is for this exact outcome, which is that you then fail a medical and get stuck in between 2 contracts. So the Dragons are trying to blame the Warriors for not telling them that this shoulder injury was worse than they expected. The Warriors are blaming the Dragons for saying, well, why did you announce the signing before you'd even done the medical? I think both of those things are fair points to make. I also think that the ultimate blame falls back upon Volkman and his agent, and probably, probably more the agent than the player in this case. Like, you're right, the player's got to take responsibility. He is the boss of the agent, but the agent gives you advice, and this is not advice that an agent should be giving, which is take fewer years while you're under injury risk and get stuck in this dumb situation where the Dragons being stupid is par for the course. Like they always do stupid things, and announcing a signing before doing the medical properly, it just plays into this idea of like the Dragons have been struggling to sign players full stop. They wanted Adam Fanua-Blake, for example, from the Warriors and weren't able to get him.
This is intricate rugby league territory. So
yeah, I suppose so. This is like them getting stressed and trying to announce a signing for a dude who has played, I checked this, 5 first-grade games. He never played at all first grade before he signed with the Warriors, which is further evidence to the idea that he probably wasn't earning that much money. Hopefully the Warriors payout still, that money goes towards him still. It was his salary that they were contributing to. So there's that. But yeah, now he's stuck without a contract this year, and no one's going to sign him until he can prove his fitness again, and he needs to fix his shoulder. And it's not a good situation, and it's one of those situations where I think everybody is at least a little bit in the wrong. While they're all trying to blame each other and say it's not our fault, it's your fault, I think everyone takes a little bit of blame on this, but ultimately it's Ronald Volkman who suffers, isn't it? And he's taken some bad advice, and he's also accepted and acted on that bad advice, which is not really what you want to be doing. I mean, I'm baffled how someone could think this is the right time to. I guess he thought he was getting first grade opportunities. I don't know, with Dragons. Maybe he might have been.
Hold that thought. Okay. I do have so I think I can explain that, but you're suggesting the Warriors are to blame in some regard.
I'm suggesting the Warriors are not blameless. Yeah, I don't think they're entirely at fault, but I do think perhaps they were happy to get rid of a player they knew that wasn't 100% and maybe took advantage of a dumb club and getting rid of them. I think they're probably the least to blame of all the parties, but I do think you can't say the Warriors are spotless and have acted perfectly, because they knew he was injured. They might not have known the full extent of it, but also, yeah, he knew he was injured, but he's not going to say that because he wants to sign the new deal. It's the Dragons. Ultimately, it is also the Dragons' responsibility to figure out that he's injured, and they did eventually. They let him train first, which is madness. But he did train with apparently a yellow bib, which is the universal rugby league sign of "Don't tackle me. I'm only here on trial." Which I've learned now. I didn't know that.
Well, who cares? That's an intricate rugby league.
That's another intricacy.
I can't find any fault in the Warriors. An injured, again, word of warning to any player, any future athlete: if you're injured, don't ask for a release. That seems like the dumbest thing you can do. So the Warriors, you're kind of implying, and I think other people are implying, that the Warriors weren't upfront and clear about Volkman's injury status. So the Warriors know his injury status. Volkman knows his injury status. I'd imagine anyone who does any sort of, in this instant, due diligence or research knows Volkman's injury status. One team, one organization did not know that injury status. That is their fault. Now, if the Warriors were trying to push Volkman out, knowing that he was injured and hiding that information from other clubs and Volkman himself, and/or Volkman himself, then it's an issue.
Although even still, there's only 1 out of 16 other clubs that probably would have fallen for that. You know, everyone else just does the medical and finds it out.
Yeah, it's not like you need to go to some German medical center and run all these tests, and it's in an extremely expensive, like this. These are run-of-the-mill contracting situations that every professional...
They said when he trained, he couldn't even pass the ball properly, which is how they realized.
Yeah.
Which is, like, you know, it's not, like you're saying, it's not difficult. It's kind of obvious.
Every professional sporting organization runs those tests. So it's not like that's out of the normal. And if you don't run those tests, you leave yourself exposed to the reason those tests exist. So I struggle to find any fault in what the Warriors have done. Volkman wanted a release while he was injured. That seems absolutely ridiculous and crazy. So why? Okay, so then we get to the timeline. Why would Ronald Volkman request a release at that stage? Well, the Dragons, they've got an opening. Talatau Amone, he's a criminal. He's not playing in the NRL. So that came to fruition. Who have the Warriors also brought in? This young kid from the Panthers, Luke Hansen, who has been training all summer, and he must be doing all right. If Luke Hansen's doing all right, training with the Warriors, then it is the job of Ronald Volkman's agent, because this is why you have an agent. You have an agent, a manager in professional sports who can find you another gig if you're not going to be playing NRL or first grade. So maybe the agent, the player, they were like, whoa, this Luke Hansen kid's pretty good. He might be in the New South Wales Cup team next year. Chanel Harris-Tavita's come back. I don't really know where I fit in. So we put the feelers out there for a couple of months, couple of weeks. No one really wants to nibble on those feelers, on the bait, because they also know Volkman's got a bit of an issue with his shoulder. Then suddenly the Dragons are into desperation mode because their half is a criminal, and they've released another young half, Jaden Sullivan, to the Tigers. So now they've got a whiff of desperation, so then they pounce on that move. But at the time, I was like, why would the Warriors grant that release to Ronald Volkman? Well, they've seen Luke Hansen train. He's a young half from the Penrith Panthers system. All the pedigree signs are immensely positive for Luke Hansen at the Warriors. And again, if the Warriors were trying to push Volkman out because of Luke Hansen's arrival, that would be an issue. So they bring in Luke Hansen, they know Volkman's buggered, so we'll shop Volkman around and we'll try to take advantage of like another club. That is kind of predatory behavior. But the way this is being portrayed by the Warriors release, so fair play, this is a Warriors perspective, but they're not going to, like, there's no reason for them to lie about it a few weeks ago. Volkman requested a release. And again, that's the most important thing, because that sets up how the whole storyline around this.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's things there we don't know how some of the dealings might have gone. I think it does seem like it was probably a relatively mutual thing, because Volkman wasn't necessarily going to play for the Warriors. Like, they certainly weren't upset to lose him. I'm happy to acquiesce, but yeah, I think from the sounds of this conversation, I find a little more fault in the Warriors, but I also don't know that that's like, it's not illegalities, you know. They've not done anything wrong necessarily. They've just maybe been a little bit shady or convenient with things, which shouldn't have been a factor, because as you say, that stuff, Volkman knew he was injured. Agent must have known he was injured. Dragons should have figured it out straight away. No other team was seemingly trying to sign him at that stage. Like, it just, due diligence should have taken care of that. And I suspect every time a player leaves, there's always little bits of that where, like, maybe hide this little bit. Like, and it might not be an injury history. It might be like the idea that maybe you have a different transfer coming in that hasn't been done yet. And that's why you want to get rid of this guy before it makes it look like you're just fire selling, all these kind of things. There's always 100 different angles going down in any transaction. And I think the Warriors were a little bit shady with it. I think it's ultimately irrelevant as to what happened afterwards because it shouldn't have mattered. The information should have been brought to light by other angles and from other angles, and it was eventually. The Dragons were so desperate for a signing that they jumped the gun. But I tell you, who does benefit from this? Paul Turner's first grade prospects. You know, as for a club that only seems to have one half now. He's an option. He played his one game as a fullback last year, but he's back utility. He's played halves through reserve grade and stuff. We'll see how that goes because there's not a lot of other Kiwi NRL angles to fall back upon with the Dragons, but maybe this is one that benefits one of Northland's best prospects.
Again, if a player asks for a release and the club provides all the information that is requested of them, there's no shadiness there.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's I understand that you might think there's a bit of shadiness because you are a Dragons fan. That's all right. I'm putting my Warriors fan hat on, so we're coming at this from the two different angles. But so there's no point, debating it further. We're going to have different perspectives. But also the idea of Warriors shadiness, to me, it goes against all the vibes I'm getting out of Mount Smart as well. Because they also took care of Volkman. If Volkman comes to them and says, we need a release, but we need you to contribute X amount of money to make it happen, the Warriors don't have to do that. But they did it. And also the Warriors don't have to grant any releases. Fanua Blake, he wants a release straight away. They don't do it. Ben Hunt wants a release straight away from the Dragons. They don't do it. You can be strict to the contracting conditions. You can also be welcoming to the best case scenario for that player. And the way the Warriors handled it, actually, to me, it shows how they go about their business. Yeah, you've found a better opportunity for you. We're going to let you go. We're going to grace you that release. And you also want us to help out with this, whether it's a salary cap thing or whether it's paying out the contract, you want us to help out with that. Yeah, we'll do that as well for you. So
apparently they've reached out with their welfare team as well to him since the shenanigans have gone down, which is also another positive reflection on the Warriors.
Exactly.